Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Carrion. I am the president of the Bachman Northwest Highway Community Association, and I'm also a member of the board of the Friends of Bachman Lake. I want to thank you for joining us again tonight for one of our monthly Neighbors in the Know. Tonight, we have a very special guest with us today. It's the Department of Water Utilities of the City of Dallas. We're going to talk about Bachman Lake and plans around the lake. But before we do that, we do have a couple housekeeping items that we want to share with the community and a couple points and events that we really think you all should know. The first thing is the mayor's back to school fair is August 21st. It's the annual back to school fair that the mayor's office hosts is August 21st at Fair Park. It's an opportunity for students to get school supplies, even though we're still not entirely sure the extent to whether it will be in person or online. Our students will need supplies, and so it's important that we take advantage of this amazing opportunity. But the important thing to know is that you need to register before August 21st, the day of the event. You have to register before August 17th. And the way to do that is to go to fairpark.org. The website will take you directly to the registration page, fairpark.org, Fair park.org is a way to register for the mayor's back to school event. So please keep that event in mind and register that, especially for our neighborhood where we have many young kids and students in our community. It's an important event for us to not miss. So it's an event we have to take advantage of. Another important thing we have to do, our second point here in tonight's housekeeping items, is the 2020 census. For our community, about 42, we currently have, I believe, about a 42% response rate for the 2020 census. We have to improve those numbers for our community. It's just important. The census is tied to federal funding for a host of different programs, for roads, for federal funding for a portion of our schools, and a series of different resources. It's really important that we do that. It's only done every 10 years. So if we miss out this time, we don't get another opportunity to do it for another 10 years. So it's really important that we do that. So if you haven't done it already, Google census.gov, go there and fill out your census today. It's really important. So now, with some other housekeeping items, I'd like to introduce you to the president of the Friends of Bachman Lake, Ms. Susanna Brown.
Thank you, Joe. We're very excited to have Dallas Water Utilities here today to give us an update about the dam, the dredging at the lake, testing that they've been doing of the water quality. And before we jump over to that, I wanted to make you aware that this coming Saturday morning, we're going to have a table at the trail, at Bachman Trail, for voter registration. So if you haven't had a chance to pick up your forms or register, we're going to make that available. You can obviously start your process online at register2vote.org, and we'll put that in the little Facebook commentary there so that you can see where you need where you need to go to start the process. We also received, all citizens received notification that the City of Dallas, the city manager for the City of Dallas has presented the proposed city budget. And that is that on Friday, and the city budget hearings are taking place starting this the 17th, and in fact, Councilman Narvaez's session on the 17th is at 6:30. The second session for District 6 is at 5:30. We will be doing a social media post through Friends of Bachman Lake to give you guys a heads up of not just the District 6, but also District 2 and District 13 sessions so that you can go and register accordingly. And then we wanted to make you aware, we always have on our website the ability to sign up for the newsletter. We just released a whole bunch of very interesting information of the work that Friends of Bachman Lake has been doing with the Regional Council of Governments in order to improve mobility and pedestrian access within the within Northwest Dallas. So please make sure that you sign up for the newsletter. We sometimes put more in-depth articles there that are, I think, very interesting for the community to be aware of. Without further ado, I want to present Mark Cottingham and with Dallas Water Utilities and the team that has put together a fantastic presentation for this evening. Mark?
Thank you, Susanna. Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to tell you, Susanna, thank you for hosting us and letting us join the Friends of Bachman Lake. We have some interesting topics to discuss tonight, and we'd like to also introduce ourselves. So first of all, my name is Mark Cottingham. I'm one of Dallas Water Utilities program managers. There are many of us. My role is part of the capital improvements program. So I'm here to introduce part of the water quality improvements that we're also talking about with the stormwater group that is now part of Dallas Water Utilities. Next slide, please. The purpose of tonight was that we've got about 30 minutes or so, probably a little bit longer, to introduce our team. So we'll talk about who each of us are. We'll also introduce Dallas Water Utilities Capital Improvements Program, like I mentioned just previously. Also talk about our Stormwater Operations Group, as Susanna mentioned earlier. We'll provide an overview of some of our infrastructure improvements that are about to commence. We're in design phase right now, and we'll talk about that regarding Bachman Lake, the dam, and the spillway. We'll also talk about, again, our Stormwater Operations Group. There's been some recent inquiries on stormwater inlets and also the maintenance that's going on there around the lake. Also, some of the water quality testing results that have been asked for in the last 6 months or so. We have some of those results to share with you. Additionally, we have some time at the end based on Susanna's introduction. There'll be time for some question and answer towards the end of the meeting. So we'll begin our discussion. So tonight's discussion, again, we'll talk about the timeline for the Bachman Lake dredging and spillway maintenance improvement. We'll also, again, talk about the Bachman water quality analysis and update. And then again, we'll go over the inlet cleaning maintenance status report from our stormwater group. And questions will be, again, asked at the end. And we'll try to entertain as many as we can. Next slide, please. I think a little bit of a lag. Hopefully everyone's seeing this. Okay, you should have in front of you a map, generally speaking, of Dallas County and some of the surrounding counties with Dallas in the middle. Just wanted a little brief overview about Dallas Water Utilities and to communicate our scope of services and what we provide to the community and customers. Dallas Water Utilities is a regional provider of water, wastewater, and stormwater services. Our operating and capital budgets range about $1.1 billion. We have about 1,600 employees and serve about 2.5 million customers over a very large area. It's about 100 square miles. Also want to mention Dallas Water Utilities' responsibilities include operation and maintenance of its infrastructure to continue to provide the water and wastewater and stormwater services to the customers of Dallas. So that's just a brief overview of Dallas Water Utilities. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about one of DWU's projects to improve and extend the life of useful infrastructure. Again, the purpose of the dam and the purpose of the project is to continue to protect public health and welfare and improve recreational use of the lake. I'd like to introduce to you one of Dallas Water Utilities project managers, Mark Mim. Mark will be joining us here in just a moment. One of Mark's responsibilities is to manage the Bachman Dam and Spillway and the lake dredging improvements projects that we'll discuss now. Before we do, I'd like to make sure we introduce each other. So next slide, please. Okay, what you have in front of you now is some contact information. Want to make sure you know who you have in front of you and the contact information, our email and our phone numbers. Again, Mark Mim is about to present on the Bachman Dam Spillway and Lake Dredging Project. I will provide the contact information for myself, which is Mark Cottingham. You have my phone number and email there in the middle. And then also my assistant director, which is Matt Pink. with his name and email number. Also wanted to let you know that there will be a link to a webpage provided at the end of the presentation for the Bachman Lake and dredging project, which I think will be very exciting and helpful for everyone. Next slide, please. And at this point, we'll turn the presentation over to Mark Mim, who's going to give an overview of the Bachman Lake and Spillway dredging project. Mark, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so let's get into this. First off, as Mark mentioned, I'm the project manager for the Bachman Lake dredging and the Bachman Lake dam rehabilitation. So I want to start off with some background on the Bachman Lake Dam. The dam was built in 1901, so it's about 120 years old. Originally, the lake was a water supply for the city of Dallas. Dallas quickly outgrew that lake in terms of capacity and water supply. So it was converted to recreational use in the 1960s. The embankment is about 35 feet tall. So it's a medium-sized dam, not a huge embankment. The spillway, which is in this photo right here, is a concrete spillway. This is where the water from Bachman Lake exits and ends up going through this channel right here and down into the Trinity River. This concrete spillway is about 180 feet across. So again, this spillway is 120 years old. So we'll be talking about that here more in a minute. Here's some key features of Bachman Lake. The lake itself, this is the western edge of the lake. This is the embankment. This is the City of Dallas Recreational Center that's there at Bachman. This is the Bachman Water Treatment Plant. This is an important water supply. It's one of 3 water plants for Dallas Water Utilities. So if you're familiar with the walking trail, this is the part of the trail here that goes across the top of the embankment and then joins with the trail that goes around the perimeter of the lake. This is a concrete spillway. This is a railroad bridge that we're able to bring rail cars of chemicals that are needed to treat the water to the Bachman plant. And then this is the spillway that conveys the water. On this side up here is the emergency spillway. In the event of a high flood condition or really heavy rain, if this spillway, when the water level rises in the lake, to protect the earthen embankment from erosion, dams have an emergency spillway. And that's what this is. So it spills over through this low area right here and then works its way down this way. There's a pond back here with some trees, and the work itself that we'll be discussing will involve building up the earthen embankment on this side and replacing this concrete spillway and the railroad bridge. Also, the trees that have overgrown into this channel here will be removed because we need to improve the passage of water for flood protection. Some of the early project drivers of why we are where we're at right now is in 2016, there was a Love Field Bachman Lake feasibility study. Different options for Bachman Lake were looked at, including more park area, breaking the lake into smaller ponds, maybe kind of making it look sort of like a Turtle Creek type environment. But in the end, when the different options were studied and what the benefits would be, the pros and cons, it was decided that the best thing to move forward with is to maintain the lake, but make park improvements such as an aquatic center, a skate park, better walking trails, and so on. And part of that is dredging of the lake. Over time, runoff with soils and erosion from the creek bed upstream deposits in the lake, and the lake has become quite shallow to the point where rowing sports and so on really can't use large sections of the lake because it is so shallow. So let's talk about the goals and timelines coming up. And one of the objectives of the project is to update the hydrology and hydraulics of the Bachman Dam and spillway. We need to make sure that the new spillway design and construction meets the required regulatory flood capacity. We're going to remove the sediment that's built up in the lake to return the lake to recreational levels. And by adding in the soil and structural components for the embankment and spillway, will improve the structural instability of the dam itself. So these projects are important because dams have several ways of they have faults, and they have to be maintained, and they need to be repaired after floods and erosion events. And the dams will typically have some of these things going on, like a boil or seepage through the soil that was used to build the dam. Sometimes the concrete for the spillway will crack. Rodents can bore into dams and levees, and that can be a problem. That's a big problem in New Orleans with nutria. And then there's various things that can just, kind of decay after a while. So the dam is 120 years old, and we do need to do some things to improve the dam and improve the maintenance, such as I mentioned, the trees that are overgrown in the spillway and seepage issues. So on the timeline, we had a very busy summer on the project. There was a lot of data and background work that has to be done before the dredging could be designed and before the structural repairs and enhancements to the dam can take place. Part of that was we did a freshwater mussel survey in the lake looking for endangered freshwater mussels. The bathymetric survey is done in the lake to determine the volume of silt and buildup of soils and deposits that have to be dredged out, so we can calculate how much that'll be in cost. There's cultural resources that were investigated. There was a topographic survey around all the lake. There was geotechnical investigations, waters of the U.S. and wetlands investigations. So all that has been accomplished, and the reports have been filed with the agencies that need that information for us to move forward. So in our timeline, this is where we're at right now. We're in our August 2020 meeting with Friends of Bachman Lake. We're on schedule. This winter, we'll complete the dredging design, and we'll advertise for bids to complete the dredging of Bachman Lake. The next thing that'll happen around the same time is the dam rehabilitation final design report will be produced by our consulting engineer, Stantec Engineering. There'll be another stakeholder meeting to give a project update sometime in the winter. In the spring of 2021, we'll open bids for the dredging services and award that contract. So it'll go to council for consideration of the dredging construction contract, and we'll begin final design on the dam rehab in spring of 2021. Around that same time, between spring and summer, the contractor to do the dredging will mobilize at Bachman, and they'll begin dredging the lake. In the fall of 2021, we'll advertise for bidding the repair and rehabilitation of the dam itself. Around winter or so of 2021, the dredging will be done. And at that time, we'll have bids in for the dam repair and rehabilitation. And that'll be going to City Council for their approval of the dam rehabilitation construction contract. In spring of 2022, the dam rehabilitation will begin. And in summer 2023, we should be wrapped up with the dam rehabilitation.
Mark, this is Susanna. I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it possible to put the screens in full view mode? It's coming across on the Facebook side very like it's shrunk. I didn't know if it's possible to get the full, if one of the buttons at the bottom allow for full screen mode.
Well, let me check that.
Okay. Yeah, don't end show. That would not be good.
Yeah, sorry. I'm not seeing that as an option to enlarge it, but maybe
At the
if
top, I think is no. I'm not
well,
familiar.
there's share, there's stop
Well, what we'll
sharing.
do is just continue going, and then once you guys send us the presentation, we'll post it on the website, and that way folks can
Certainly.
actually see the data a little bit more clearly. So let's
Okay.
just do that. Okay, thanks.
I don't see it in the display settings. I thought it would be there, and I looked earlier, and I could not find a setting for full screen. Okay, so continuing on. These are the activities that we've completed for the field work. I mentioned the topographic survey, the mussel survey. Freshwater mussels were found in the lake, which is good. No endangered mussels were found. Common lake mussels were there, not in great abundance. About 90 were found over a 5-day period, but there are mussels in the lake. The bathymetric survey was completed. We've estimated the dredging volume. Geotechnical investigation along the embankment is done. The waters of the U.S. survey and the cultural resources survey are completed for permitting. Here's a photo of the divers that did the freshwater mussel survey. So we're going through the dredging design right now, and there's several options to dredge a pond or a lake like this. One of them is to drain the lake and go in with heavy equipment and dig it out and haul it off. It's a very messy procedure. It's hard to do, especially in a lake that's surrounded by parks like this. And in this case, our engineers are recommending, and this is usually what is used, is a dredge barge like this will be employed to dredge up the sediment that's built up in Bachman Lake. And the way this works is this is kind of like a boat. It's a barge. It moves around the lake. And this cutting rig right here is lowered down to depth. And the mud and silt is sucked up and it's pumped to shore. And at the shore will be dewatering equipment that'll dry out that mud or press the water out of it. The water will be returned to the lake. And the solids and soils will be hauled off to be used as beneficial cover at landfills. So in our milestone summary, just getting back to where schedule's at, we've completed the field work. The dredging design will be done in the winter. We'll begin the dredging work next spring. We'll begin the final design this winter. We'll begin the design will be completed in fall of next year. And we'll be done with the dam construction in summer of 2023. So now I'd like to turn over the presentation to Sergio Munoz, and he'll talk about stormwater operations and the water quality program.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. We're with the stormwater operations and water quality in the neighborhood drainage services. My name is Sergio Munoz. I'm the interim program manager for neighborhood drainage services. We'll also have with us Nusrat Munir. She's the environmental manager too for neighborhood services. Next slide, please. Here's similar as Mark Cottingham mentioned, we have our names here with our phone numbers and emails to detail everybody. Someone that I did not introduce is Sarah Standifer. She's our assistant director for stormwater operations, and she also has her contact information there as well. I'm going to give a brief overview of the stormwater operations and its responsibilities. Next slide, please. The stormwater operations It's obligated to regulatory compliance through the MS4 permit and the USAC for the Dallas levee system and other improvements related to the waters of the U.S. Next slide, please. And here you see a map of the Trinity River watershed. One of 23 major Texas watersheds, extends from Oklahoma to the Gulf of Mexico, approximately about 6,050 square miles above Dallas. Next slide, please. And in this map, you'll see about all the waterways of the city. There's about 1,800 miles of storm sewer, about 30 miles of levees, 13 pump stations at 8 locations, 6 pressure sewers, 8 street pump stations, and about 661 miles of channels. And these include both public and private channels. There's also about 39,000 acres of floodplains. Next slide, please. I would like to turn it over to Nusrat Munir, who will continue with the water quality.
Thank you, Sergio. Good evening, everybody. My name is Nusrat Munir, as Sergio introduced, and I'll be going over on water quality program and Bachman Lake data today. The city of Dallas is permitted for the municipal separate storm sewer system through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. This program includes several components, which includes maintenance of storm sewer system and the surface runoff water quality program. Next slide. The surface water quality has a program. It's divided into further sub-programs like wet weather program, dry weather program, bioacid program. All these programs have approximately 120 sites that are located all over the city of Dallas. 28 sites are for local wet weather. 12 are regional wet weather sites. The regional wet weather sites, this program is run in collaboration with North Central Texas Council of Governments. And we have 72 bioacid sites. We collect water quality samples from all of the 72 sites, but there are 26 sites from where we collect macroinvertebrates. These are bugs. We collect from the water quality sites, and the bugs play a very important role in determining the quality of the water. If we find pupa or larvae of caddish fish, mayfly, and penny water, these are very delicate flies, and if we find lots of pupas of these, so it means the water quality is good. On the other hand, if we find lots of leeches, snails, flatworms, they can tolerate the pollutant. So that tells us the water quality of that creek is not so great. And in water quality program, as I said, is further divided into different programs. So dry weather is one of the programs where we do inspections of outfalls. There are approximately 7,500 outfalls that we inspect during the 5-year permit term. If any flow is observed during the inspection, a water sample is collected and analyzed to determine the source, such as if it's a groundwater, if it's a sprinkler discharge, or an illicit discharge. If it's determined to be an illicit discharge, it is tracked to the source, and the responsible party is notified to remedy the discharge. OEQS, Office of Environmental Quality and Sustainability, is also notified if illicit discharge is found to be from a construction or industrial site. Water quality team also responds to service requests. The 3 major service requests that my team responds is water pollution, fish kills, and internal samplings. Public is advised to call 311 to report any water quality concerns. We also have special projects in water quality program. The special projects, the lifetime could be 6 months to a year, up to 5 years, depending upon the program. So We sample either on quarterly basis or monthly basis. There's a program, Clean Rivers Program, that is run in coordination with Trinity River Authority. This program we sample on quarterly basis and send a report to them. And on monthly basis is the Powerhole Wetland Project, Bachman Lake, and Kidd Spring. These are sampled on monthly basis. We also have three little, previous slide please. Okay, there are also three litter booms installed at Bachman Lake, White Rock Lake, and Lake Cliff. These litter booms help collect the floatable trash and prevents it from entering into the connecting water body. Reports are sent to the appropriate personnel within the Parks and Recreation Department detailing trash accumulation and maintenance if needed. TMDL is a total maximum daily load. This is a brand new program that was implemented this year. The overall goal of this program is to help reduce the bacterial levels in creeks throughout the City of Dallas watersheds. Samples are collected intermittently during dry periods to trace and identify point source pollutant infiltration. Okay, for Bachman Lake, we sampled from January to June, 3 sites. BACL1 is an upstream site. This site was located downstream of Lemon Avenue Bridge. Then BACL2 was a midpoint that was located right in the center of the lake. And BAC3 is the downstream site. And this site was located upstream of the Denton Bridge, dry bridge. For Bachman's sampling, lake sampling, they were collected according to the sampling plan design to obtain the water quality information for Bachman. Standard EPA procedures were utilized to collect data to determine the water quality of the lake while comparing the water quality of the upstream and downstream locations. Okay, this is the list of the acronyms that are most commonly used in a water quality program. Okay. The sampling plan included the following parameters, which we collected and analyzed for DO, pH, conductivity, ammonia, nitrates, total phosphorus, hardness, chlorine, metals, TSS, stability, and E. coli. No samples for TPH tests were collected because there was no hydrocarbon chain observed during the sampling events. All these parameters that we collected they are the indicators of the pollutants in the surface water. For example, the E. coli. In surface water, E. coli comes from either animal waste or like dog poop or wastewater discharge. So it's really important if we are walking our dogs, we should pick up after the dogs. If we are walking the dog and leave the dog's business over there and it rains within the same day or next day, everything is going to be washed into the creek and the lake, and the bacterial levels are going to be elevated. And you can see in the chart on February I can't see it so tiny, I believe it's February the 4th when we went the first time. That day it was raining. The E. coli levels are really high. After 72 hours of rainy event, we went back and recollected the samples. The E. coli levels went down to normal. So it's really important to pick up after our dogs so we don't let it sit there and let it run into our creeks and surface waters. Okay, this is the geomeans of E. coli results. The blue bar is at 126. That's the limit set by TCQ. Geomean, you take the average of 3 or more samples. If the result is less than 126, it meets the TCQ established criteria. So for all these 3 sites, we can see it's less than 126. So water quality in regards to E. coli was really good. For ammonia, most of the samples were non-detect. Only in January, we saw minor hits. And the ammonia, the source for ammonia could be wastewater, again, dog poop, or it could be a fertilizer. And all the results for ammonia were also below the standard levels. For nitrogen, we can see there are minor hits, but the established level is 1.68 for nitrogen, and all the sampling events throughout the 6-month period, they were less than 1.68. Okay, next. Phosphorus, there are very minor hits. The established level for phosphorus is 1.25. Okay, this is the statistical analysis table. On the first row, that is Texas Surface Water Quality Standards acceptable values. You can see for E. coli is 126. The highlighted yellow rows, those are the means for the samples over the 6 months period. We can see the mean for all 3 sites was less than 126. The pH, if you look at the max for pH, it's 6.5 to 9, and the means were also within that range. Conductivity is less than 1500. TSS turbidity, they were less than 15, so all the values, they meet the TCQ established limits. So to conclude, the statistical analysis, the data determined the water quality of Bachman Lake was compliant with Texas surface water quality standards set by TCQ. These are the references that water quality team uses in a water quality program. And I will pass it on to Sergio again. Thank you.
Hey guys, this is Susanna. We have about 3 minutes left because I want to make sure that we're leaving sufficient time to answer questions for the community. There's some really good questions that have come in. And so Sergio, I'm sorry that you're getting the short end of the stick. I would skip the slides that are background slides and just get to the sections that are specific to Bachman.
Okay, let's get to it.
Right, so we're almost done. The Neighborhood Drainage Services is a group that's responsible for the removal of blockages on city-owned inlets, creeks, channels, except creeks and channels located in parks, storm sewers, and response to inclement weather emergencies such as snow and ice, windstorms, and street flooding. The next slide, please. And you can see on the next slide where the locations are. Pretty much everything that's in red has been cleaned. We pointed some of those through the next couple of slides. You'll see a close-up of each one of those. You can just walk through those. It'll identify each of the locations that the cleaning was done. So, and you can go to slide 49. It'll show the cleaning of all the inlets that was done as well. Next slide. And basically, as is mentioned here, all 25 inlets around Bachman Lake were cleaned on April 2nd. Additionally, all inlets and outlets leading to the lake were also cleaned on August 5th, which was just a few days ago. And that was short and sweet. I'll send it over to Mark as well.
Thank you. Thank you. That was definitely short and sweet. Wow, I'm impressed. Okay, so Michael, back to you, Michael Cintron, to do our Q&A.
Well, from what I can gather, they came in fast and furious. So let's see if we can crank these out and answer them as quickly as we can. So a question came in about the plan for wildlife. What is the plan B for the wildlife in the water? And I guess that also talks to what is the expectation of the level of water in the lake when these projects start?
Okay, I'll field the question initially. Just wanted to make it clear that we're in early phases of the project. We're in the design phase. Our consultants are currently going through and assessing the wildlife. For example, one of the slides that Mark Mim showed in the presentation was a mussel survey. I know that some preliminary results show that they did find mussels. there's additional survey going on for the wildlife that's in the lake. If you'd like to expand on that, I can point that over to Mark Mim. Mark, would you like to expand on that?
Certainly. So the Waters of the U.S. survey was done for to determine the wetlands surrounding Bachman Lake. The bathymetric survey was done to determine the level of silt and solids in the lake. There's typical fish and turtles in Bachman Lake. There's waterfowl that fly in and swim and feed in the lake. So there's really nothing extraordinary in terms of rare wildlife or something at Bachman Lake. The dredging will be pulling out mud out of the lake, but you know, that's part of dredging. So we really are not going to be relocating fish. Fish can swim away from disturbances like that.
Right, and Mark, ma'am, I think there might be some confusion that might be worth pointing out, that the lake is not going to be drained according to the latest plan that you guys have. Maybe that is what requires clarification based on the question that came in from Facebook. Will the lake,
what we can tell you now, sorry, go ahead, Suzanne, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, will the lake be drained or not? And I think that's where the question came in regarding wildlife.
Mark can expand on this. Our early indications are that the hydraulic dredging, the slide that Mark Mim showed earlier, our initial indications from our consultants are indicating that hydraulic dredging is more advantageous, both economically and environmentally, in that you'll be preserving a lot of the wildlife, as Mark mentioned earlier from the survey data. Even though there are wildlife in the area, hydraulic dredging allows the animals to swim away and protects them in a better way than draining the lake, where you have to relocate fish from the lake itself. The other benefit of the hydraulic dredging, as they're indicating in the study, is odor. Having that lake with water in it actually keeps a lot of that odor in the water. Mark, anything you want to expand on that at all?
No, that's a great answer, Mark. And now, when it comes time to work on the spillway design and replace the concrete spillway at the dam itself, the contractor will probably opt to use what's called a cofferdam. It's like a dam outside of a dam to isolate that area for their work. But they may need to lower the water level a little bit to do some critical tie-ins and some critical concrete work. It's like on the aprons and so on. But the lake will not be drained.
Okay, we have another question about the trail. Will the full circle trail be maintained, and what's going to happen with the western part? Is it going to be moved, or how is it going to be affected?
As relates to trails, there will be some temporary interruption of trails during the construction for sure, and that's mainly to protect citizens' health and welfare. Being around heavy equipment can be dangerous, so for obvious reasons, there are some early plans to have some temporary trails to allow people to use the lake, but it will not be on the trails as you see them today. They'd be temporary, and we have some schematics for those that we can talk about at maybe our next meeting on what those are going to look like as we advance the design. Mark, anything you expand on the trails?
Certainly. We've already been in communication with the Parks Department and the Streets and Roads Department with the City of Dallas. They're aware that a detour will need to be put in place for people running around the lake or using the trail to get off of the embankment, because that area will be under construction. So there won't be a trail on that embankment until we're all done. And then the trail will be reestablished at the top of the embankment like it is now. But the current trail will be covered up and with the new soil that'll be put in place to strengthen the embankment.
Another question regarding any landfills that have been identified that could receive some of the beneficial material from dredging?
There are several. I know you've got an answer on that, so you can just take that, please.
Sure. Okay. Yes, that's been studied. There's about 5 different landfills that the material can go to. All the landfills want it because they need daily cover soil. So disposing of the soil should not be an issue on the project. What it really will come down to is the economics of haul distance. It's expensive to truck material, so the closer it is, the better.
Okay, we had another question that got answered actually, and it's who manages the litter boom at Bachman Lake, and the answer is the Parks Department. So we have that answered, and also, how can the public access the information? We had a lot of great information, a lot of details, chemistry, and all kinds of other things. And can the public access this information, and how?
Hey, Sergio, could you or Nusrat please respond to that question, please? If you're talking,
Sure,
your microphone is muted.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, we'll answer it. Yeah, basically what is asked from anybody is to have an open records request. You can go on DallasCityHall.com and basically ask for what information you require. Like in these samples that are done on a monthly basis, you can ask for that if that's what you wish to have. You have to be specific.
And to add to that, this particular presentation, this is for the community to be aware. Mark will send me a copy, and Michael and I will make sure that it's posted on the website. So what is presented today will be made available to the community. If we have a follow-up presentation early next year, maybe with DWU, a continuation of how the project is going, and also the completion, the status for the rest of the year on the water testing. Clearly, that would be made available as well. But if you want the real-time data,
well, let me add to that we do have a public relations and project information website that's under development right now. And the domain has been established. It's BachmanLakeDam.com. That will be our project website. So the different studies and reports and presentations made to the public will be posted on that website. So you'll be able to access that anytime you want.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we link to that then, Mark.
Right.
And Susanna, we also want to remind the audience that this is a result of a lot of advocacy and studies about what to do with Bachman Lake, because there was one time it was considered just to be shrunken or taken away. So thanks to those who joined us and others during the committee meetings and showing up at City Hall in force, this is a result. It's the most economical option. It saves the lake, and it's something that's very necessary. As was mentioned, it's a 120-year-old dam and in need of repair. So we might go through a little bit of ugly for a little while, but it's going to be amazing. So lots of great work ahead, and we very much appreciate DWU and what they're doing.
So Mark, I actually had one final question. You're absolutely right, Michael. Thank you for that. But I think it goes back to this idea that we want to make sure that the lake stays protected, stays beautiful over time. And the reality is that it's a big creek that comes into the lake. There's a lot of silt that's coming down. How do we make sure that we don't face the same challenges with the siltation, and as we lovingly call it, Bachman Island? Is that going to be a reality every 10 to 15 years? How is the city going to budget for something like that? Or is this project take care of some type of a siltation basin or something that allows maintenance to occur versus what we're facing right now?
Well, Susanna, what I can start with is part of what we committed to was to look at the feasibility of a sediment forebay. So basically a structure that would, in theory, trap and hold the sediment, and then, like you said, be able to be maintained over years. Our current study with the design engineer is looking at the feasibility of that. So we would need to go into some additional discussions in the future to determine how that would be funded, financed, and then finally designed and then constructed, but that would be an assessment only level at this part for this project.
Right, and to the extent that stormwater redirection potentially happens off of, going around the airport, the area from Lovers down into Bachman Creek, I think the expectation would be that there has to be some management of siltation that goes along, if not now, then in the future as part of that analysis, correct?
Correct. And I think that it's a great point that you brought up in terms of the redirection of stormwater flow. There's a part of the project that we did not get into the details of that talks about pulling some of the stormwater prior to it entering Love Field and bringing that to Bachman Branch. And the reason I bring that up, there's been a lot of concern about what water goes into Bachman Lake. And I think this conversation, which we'll be able to talk about in much greater detail from after we get through our feasibility study and design, is we can look at how that stormwater would be pulled off prior to entering Love Field and then be redirected to Bachman Branch and then over the dam and spillway that is there for the current for the future design of the dam. So it doesn't really. I kind of wonder about your question in terms of looking at the siltation and how that would work. I think our overall design is not really going to get into how to capture the sediment, but it would give a feasibility of how that might happen in the future. So it's not going to be something that will be designed as part of this current study, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I don't think that we should be, see no evil, right? We have to realize that this has to be part for White Rock Lake as well as for Bachman Lake of the standard maintenance and management of these waterways. And so if it's not going to be through siltation basin, it needs to be through some budgetary planning that foresees these projects every 10 to 15 years. That's the only point I was making. The last question I have for you is, this is obviously both the dredging as well as the dam construction. It's a big project. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of work that's still ongoing. When do you think it would be reasonable for DWU to provide the community another update, in addition, obviously, to the information that you'll have available on the website? What do you foresee?
We had originally committed to a public meeting coming up towards the end of summer, but as we all know, I believe the end of summer would be September 20th. So we're essentially a month away. Knowing where we are with our study, it's probably more reasonable to say that we would do an update this fall for the community. I think that we'll be much further along with our design and feasibility study, where some of the information that we'd like to present and also collect additional feedback. We have a lot more information to talk about at that time to present some information and then get some specific feedback on what the community is looking for and what we could do to enhance our designs for the dam, the spillway, and specifically the dredging.
Fantastic. Well, let's make sure to keep in touch so that you have this forum at your disposal for another update, maybe early next year or at the end of this year, just so that we can keep the community informed of this really big, massive infrastructure project that we've all been kind of knowing is happening in the background. So we really do appreciate the time that you and your team have taken. And Sarah, thank you as well to the Stormwater Group for participating and facilitating the testing of the water quality of the lake. I think that was extremely interesting. And it's important to understand, I think, for everybody that after a rain, the E. coli levels will be very high on the lake. So just be aware of that as you're rowing on the lake or fishing in the lake. Just keep that in the back of your mind. And let's all do a better job of picking up dog poop if you're walking your dogs around the lake. But anyways, anything else, Michael, that we should add before we close the feed on the Facebook Live? We will stay on the WebEx and then initiate the Spanish version. Michael?
Yep, nothing in terms of questions, but just to reiterate what you're saying, we're very grateful that we have the quality of testing of the water as well as the frequency now, and we've always been curious and also concerned about where water runoff comes from, what it brings into the water, and where it goes from there. So this really helps answer a lot of questions, and we look forward to more. And it's good to know that it's meeting the standards, both federal, state, and municipal level. So that's good, and thank you for doing that. If you are subscribers to our newsletter, you probably are aware that we're embarking on a project for the Bachman Lake Greenbelt. That's east of the lake, east of Lemon Avenue, and we're still raising money for that. So we raised money in 2019, had matching funds, and we're able to finally utilize that. And in the end, we're going to have a beautiful trail and path through some very wooded and pretty areas that a lot of people don't know much about. And but there's a lot of cleaning up to do. There's privet to be cleared, and we're still raising funds for that. So if you can go to friendsofbachmanlake.org and look up the donation page, it's very simple to do, and we really appreciate just to know that the money is being used well, and we're continuing to raise for that. Susanna.
Thank you, Michael. I was on mute. I think at this point, Ruth, unless there's any like burning questions that came up from Facebook, I'm going to ask you, just let us know.
I believe that's it.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. We're going to close the feed on the Facebook side. We'll stay on the WebEx and then initiate the 7 o'clock call.